William Lane Craig does not have any concern about the once for all delivered to the saints faith. Or if he does, he defines that so narrowly that not even Apollinarianism, not even original sin, not even the historicity of Adam, is within the realm of the narrowly defined contents of the faith. And so all these people are freaking out because William Lane Craig is basically expressing the viewpoint of the large majority of what calls itself Christian scholarship today. That's one of the reasons you've never heard me I have often criticized Craig and Turek and that whole evidentialist classical apologetics realm for doing the majority of scholars view the resurrection this way, these minimal facts arguments and all the rest of this kind of stuff. I've never used that because I am well aware of the fact that the majority of scholarship does not believe almost anything that the scriptures teach because they're secularists, they're naturalists, they're materialists, or whatever else they might be. They don't believe that there was someone named Moses, or if there was someone named Moses, he had nothing to do with those writings that have his name on them. And most of them believe that there may have been a tribal chieftain named David, but we don't have almost anything he ever wrote either. And that the Old Testament is a badly cobbled together, badly redacted, badly edited mishmash, a mess of stuff, which is taught in the large majority of theological schools, whether on undergraduate or graduate level. That's what you're going to get hit with. And therefore, there's really no foundation for the New Testament to be seen as having any kind of consistency to it either. And so that's what you have in the quote unquote academy, which is why I've never cared to have a seat amongst the unbelievers. It's just, I want to do good scholarship, but I'm not interested in their standards and stuff like that. When they look at, I have my Jeffrey Rice 1977 NASB with me. I've got the NA28 too. So, but I'm going to G3 and Jeffrey's going to be there. So I wanted to bring these along. When I hold this book, I believe that God, from the first words of Genesis to the last words of Revelation, intends to communicate a seamlessly perfect, but not simplistic message of his will in regards to the creation of the entire universe, and specifically for his people, so that they may be encouraged and have guidance and know what God would have them to do. And so this is not a simplistic revelation. It requires the greatest effort that we can put into it. But it does present a consistent message. And that's really a dividing line. There are so many theological professors who simply believe that there is no consistent message. And so all that going back to, I guess the reason that Craig gets so much attention is I wonder how many people who responded to Craig's mythological, historical stuff about Adam ever listened to the debates he did with Shabir Ali. Now, I would, because I've debated Shabir many more times than he has. And so that makes a connection there. And I've debated Shabir on the same issues that William Lane Craig has. And so there's a real contrast in the answers that we would give, given where we're coming from. And so I just wonder how many people have heard him dismiss original sin as mere speculation, chuckle at the concept of inerrancy. If they're aware that he's a avowed Neo-Apollinarian, did they ever hear him actually likening the doctrine of the Trinity to Kerberos, the three-headed dog of Greek mythology? Have they thought through what Molinism even means? Most people don't really understand what Molinism means. And you put all that together, and obviously, from Craig's perspective, he doesn't feel bound to the history of Christian theology in any way. But the corrective that he would bring to that is not derived exegetically, it is derived philosophically. And since he basically views himself as the leading Christian philosopher, I really do feel that he does. He's told that all the time. And so I think eventually he's come to believe that. Then you can see why, given his acceptance of Darwinism and associated concepts that come with that, I wasn't in the least bit shocked, surprised, anything. I'm glad people are responding, but I think people just need to. I've tried to communicate the reality that if you believe that the doctrine of the Trinity is true, that it's divine revelation, that it is the coherent message of Scripture, that it's true in history, it's true in reality, it's foundational to how we're to view the world, all those things, you are in such a small minority, it's astonishing, because even amongst people who would confess the doctrine of the Trinity, a large portion of them would do so out of tradition. Well, it's because it's what my church teaches. And that's different than believing it's true because God has revealed it. And it's actually foundational to how you understand what God's doing in the world, his relationship to the world, the gospel Trinitarian, all that stuff. So if you believe that this is sufficient, inspired, and consistent enough to communicate divine truth across the generations, across cultures, you are in such a small minority numerically today that it's astonishing. Now, don't get me wrong. God has his people who believe those things in every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. And in comparison to the number of people who believed that in the days of Paul, it's exploded all over the world. But we are also in a time, I think we might historically be seen to be in a pre-pruning time, where there are a lot of people who call themselves Christians who are not. And if the Spirit of God has to move in your heart and bring spiritual life to you, regeneration, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about an outward commitment or tradition or a culture or anything like that. I'm talking about actually being born again. So all of this to say, you need to recognize that if you believe the things that we talk about on this program, you need to believe them because God has revealed them, not because I said it, or Voddie Baucham said it, or Paul Washer said it, or John MacArthur said it, or R.C. Sproul said it, or blah, 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 Calvin and Luther. No, the firm foundation must be that God has revealed these things in reality. And that nothing can change that. You know, I saw all the commentary going on and heard people doing webcasts and everything else about William Lane Craig. And I'm glad, don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just sort of sitting back going, yeah, well, it's worthwhile to give a response, to give an answer, no two ways about it. But so many of them were like, he's a famous Christian apologist. Well, yes, he is, but his approach has been consistent down through the years. And I would think that most of us who understand Reformed theology and the necessity, important necessity of presuppositions and recognizing the starting point is absolutely massively important. Got to do something here. I'm sorry. How many of you older folks are sitting around, you're in the middle of something, and then all of a sudden you go, did I lock the door? And I'm seeing a lot of people walking around. It's getting dark. And I'm not 1,000% certain that I locked the doors on my truck out there. There's not really much in there to steal, but the nice thing is I have my phone, so that means I can lock it anyways. And so I just told the powers that be up in the satellites someplace to lock the door, and so it is. Anyway, I'll feel better. Okay, putting William Lane Craig aside, and that whole thing.